Some words don't just hurt. They change everything. I still remember the exact moment my mother-in-law looked at my newborn daughter and said something that froze the entire room. "She doesn't look like my son," she said slowly. "Honestly, she looks like another man." At first I thought I misheard her. But I didn't. Because after that sentence, nothing in my life stayed normal. Not my marriage. Not my home. Not my peace. And what she didn't know was that one accusation would cost her everything. My name is Mimi Park, I am 31 years old, and I live in Brooklyn, New York, USA. And this is the story of how one cruel sentence from my mother-in-law turned into the destruction of her own life. It all started the day my daughter was born. The happiest day of my life. My husband Ethan was holding our baby girl for the first time, crying softly, overwhelmed with joy. I remember thinking, this is it, this is family. But I didn't notice her. My mother-in-law, Margaret Hayes, standing at the corner of the room, watching me, not smiling like everyone else, just watching me. At first she said nothing. She held the baby once, touched her cheek, and stayed quiet. But I noticed her eyes. They weren't warm. They were searching, like she was looking for something that didn't belong. That night she said it. We were all in the living rooms. My husband was tired but happy. I was holding my daughter. And then my mother-in-law leaned forward slightly and said, "She doesn't really look like Ethan." Silence. I laughed nervously. "Barbies change a lot in the beginning," I said. But she shook her head. "No, I mean something else." Then she looked directly at me and said it. "Are you sure she is his child?" The room went completely still. My husband looked confused. "What are you talking about, Mom?" But she didn't stop. "She looks like another man," she repeated. That sentence, that one sentence, changed everything. I felt my chest tighten. "Excuse me," I said. She stayed calm. Too calm. Like she had been thinking this for a long time. "I'm just saying what I see," she replied. But I knew what this was. Not concern. Not curiosity. Suspicion. My husband stood up immediately. "Mom, that's enough." But she didn't move. She just looked at the baby again. And smiled slightly. A strange, uncomfortable smile. Like she believed she was right. After that night, everything shifted. Slowly. Quietly. Dangerously. She started asking questions. About my pregnancy. About timing. About doctors. About things that made no sense. And then the whispers began. Not directly at me. But around me. Friends acting differently. Family members avoiding eye contact. Small comments that felt like poison. One day I heard something that broke me. "She's hiding something." I knew exactly where it came from. My mother-in-law. I confronted her. "Why are you doing this?" I asked. She looked at me calmly. "I'm protecting my son." "From what?" I snapped. She paused. Then said, "From being fooled." That was the moment I understood. She wasn't confused. She wasn't doubtful. She had already decided my guilt. My husband tried to stay neutral at first. "I don't think Mom means harm," he said. But I could see it. Even in him. A small crack was forming. That's what doubt does. It doesn't explode. It spreads. And then came the worst part. She suggested a DNA test. Just like it was normal. Just to clear everything, she said. I refused immediately. But refusal didn't stop her. It only made her more convinced. Days turned into tension. Tension turned into isolation. And isolation turned into pressure. Until finally, I felt like I was fighting alone in my own home. But what my mother-in-law didn't know was this. I wasn't afraid of the truth. I was afraid of what she would become when she realized she was wrong. And she was about to find out. In the worst way possible, the room felt different after the DNA result was read. Not lighter. Not peaceful. Just exposed. Like something ugly had been dragged into daylight, and now no one knew where to hide it. Ethan sat frozen for a few seconds, staring at the paper as if it might change if he looked at it long enough. Margaret was the first to break. This can't be right, she whispered. But the science didn't move. It didn't care about beliefs. Only truth. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Ethan slowly looked up at his mother. And for the first time in his life, his voice wasn't confused. It was final. You were wrong. That sentence hit the room harder than any argument ever could. Margaret blinked like she hadn't expected reality to answer back. I was only trying to protect you, she said quickly. But even she didn't sound convinced anymore. Because protection doesn't require destruction. And what she had done wasn't protection. It was accusation. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy. It carried every rumor she had spread. Every whisper she had planted. Every doubt she had tried to turn into truth. And now all of it had collapsed in front of her. Over the next few hours, the story she built began to fall apart piece by piece. Family members who once listened to her started questioning her judgment. The same people she had convinced started stepping back. Because now there was proof. And proof is louder than gossip. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't need to. He just looked at her differently. Like he was seeing her for the first time. Not as a mother, but as someone who crossed a line that cannot be undone. That night, Margaret went to her room. She didn't argue anymore. She didn't defend herself anymore. She just closed the door. And for the first time in a long time, she was silent. But silence didn't mean peace. Because behind that door, reality finally caught up with her. Everything she had said. Everything she had done. Everything she had believed without proof. It all came back at once. Days passed. The house didn't feel the same. Not because something was physically broken, but because trust had been replaced by distance. Ethan slowly started realizing what had happened. Not just the accusation, but the manipulation behind it. One evening he finally spoke. I should have stopped it earlier, he said quietly. But it wasn't just about stopping. It was about believing the wrong voice for too long. I didn't answer immediately. Because some things don't need fast reactions. They need clarity. And clarity had already arrived. Margaret eventually came out of her room again. But she was different. Less loud. Less certain. Less controlling. Because the power she thought she had was gone. One night she stood at a distance, watching the baby sleep. For a long time she didn't speak. Then she finally said, in a low voice, I thought I was protecting this family. There was no anger in my reply. Only truth. You weren't protecting it, I said. You were doubting it. And for once she didn't argue. She just stood there. Quiet. Understanding, maybe too late. Because in the end, truth doesn't punish loudly. It simply arrives. And when it does, everything built on doubt starts to fall.